Listen, not all Swedes are lost. I should say, not all Swedes are lost. We need the snow bunnies. We need the Swedes that are hardcore right, conservative, and do not like their government. Bring them to America. That's a good segue into this next one. So Trump essentially, dude, this is great. This is great. Trump's refugee overhaul, if you haven't heard about it, starting to happen. So his administration is realizing, or I should say it's prioritizing the refugees who speak English, right? Who come from stable backgrounds, who actually have skills that they can use. Right now, they share Western values, which in practice, if you remember months ago, would probably mean white South Africans. But he did mention Europeans who support populist policies, oppose mass migration in their own countries, and they're being targeted for it, right? And of course, it's causing the usual suspects to lose their fucking minds. They're screaming racism and white supremacy, just like you see in this Reddit post stuff we've been reading. But really what he's talking about is just basic common sense immigration policy that every successful country has practiced throughout history. Seriously. Essentially, the tards at New York Times is where I saw this. They ran a hit piece calling this an overhaul that would favor white people. Like it's some kind of gotcha or something. When the reality is, we're prioritizing people who will actually integrate into American society versus taking in what? The millions of people from cultures that are completely incompatible with Western civilization who end up on welfare for generations and never assimilate. Makes sense, right? So if you're going to take in refugees at all, why the fuck wouldn't you prioritize the ones that are most likely to succeed and contribute? But apparently that's racist now. According to the actual leftist racist in the mainstream media. So like that word has completely lost any punch it's ever had. So I'll tell you why this actually matters. Because let's go back into what's happening in South Africa right now. Specifically to white South Africans, which is a preview of what diversity and multiculturalism eventually leads to when you let it run its course. We're talking about systematic targeting of white farmers, land expropriation without compensation, and the murder rates are off the fucking charts over there. So the numbers are horrifying as shit. You have over 400 farm attacks a year in South Africa. White farmers, they're being murdered at rates 20 times the national average. We're not talking about quick deaths. We're talking torture, rape. Dude, entire families getting butchered, including kids. The kind of savagery that makes cartels look soft as fuck, tame. And since
$9.99, I think the SCOTUS potentially knocking down race-based districts will have more impact than the shutdown because we can get the supermajority to not have to negotiate with the Dems anymore.
Yes, you're correct about that. We'll see what they actually rule. Everybody has been saying that's what we're leaning towards. And if so, oh boy, a lot is going to change in America when we get all those extra seats. Yeah, I'm excited for that. I think that's going to be the nail in the coffin for Dems ever going to have like a serious contention, probably for presidency too. Yeah, I mean, you can gridlock a Dem president now. You can do so much. So it seems like we're walking back a bunch of DEI. We're walking back a lot of race-based legislation that we had before. I think it's a good thing, dude. They're going to call them racist. They're going to call them white supremacists. This is, I don't know. How could you see this? This is literally what Democrats are fighting for, which is stop. You remember? Stop being racist. Stop judging people based on their skin color. Stop making everything about an ethnicity or, race, essentially. And it's like, okay, well, let's roll back all the race-based legislation that we have. Cool. Okay. And then they're like, no, you can't do that. That's racist. What do you mean, dude? We're trying to see everybody as equal. No? Think about it. So anyways, back to South Africa. They had thousands of fucking farm murders over the years. And white farmers specifically are being killed. Black farmers got killed too, but specifically like the targeting of the white farmers was the worst. And those are only the numbers. We only have those numbers. And they're hard to come by because the ANC government refuses to track the farm murders by race. So that's just what's made a stink in the media that people have been tracking. And what is the South African government doing about this, by the way? They're literally passing laws to take land without paying for it. They literally have in 2025, which is why Trump brought him in the White House, an expropriation act that lets them seize white, so I'm going to say that again, white-owned farms in public interest. This is clearly race-based legislation. And in terms of this public interest, without compensation, which is essentially legalized theft, targeting the people who actually know how to fucking farm and produce food. This is what's insane. Trump got this. This is why he called it genocide on live TV. He brought the president, Ramaphosa, into the Oval Office, showed him the kill the Boer chants in all those videos and memorials that were lined up on that highway with thousands of crosses that were representing murdered farmers, and he demanded accountability. And Ramaphosa just sat there, dude, and lied, saying that there's no targeting happening. It's all just general crime, completely full of shit. So Trump essentially cut U.S. aid to South Africa. He imposed sanctions, and he started accepting the Afrikaner refugees. Remember, we had a group of like 59 of them arrive in May, and some more came to Atlanta in June, and the conservative media was celebrating that shit. Finally, look at them. And they were showing them with American flags, and already we love America. And, you know, everybody on the left, Jesus Christ, like, and this is so racist. Why are we helping white people? The left was literally screaming that we're prioritizing white refugees over black refugees from other African countries. Are you fucking kidding me? These people are facing actual genocide. Their land is being stolen, actually, by a corrupt Marxist government. They're being murdered in their homes, and we're supposed to ignore that because what? They're white? Go fuck yourself, okay? And what's more insane is that the white farmers in South Africa produce 70% of the country's commercial agriculture. Dude, they're the ones who actually know how to farm. The ones who actually have some fucking skills and knowledge to run productive operations. And the ANC is driving them out. That's insane. They're taking their land and they're giving it to people who don't know what the fuck they're doing, which is exactly what happened in Zimbabwe. And I love the story of Zimbabwe. I've been reading about Zimbabwe, or I should say, the land that was once Rhodesia. Let's get into Zimbabwe. This is what happens essentially. I guess you could say, when you let this ideology run its course fully. This is the end game. So Zimbabwe used to be Rhodesia. And before the communists took over, it was the breadbasket of Africa, you guys. It exported food to the entire continent. It was one of the most successful, prosperous countries in the region. And it was run by a white minority government, which according to modern sensibilities is the ultimate sin. But, you know, think about that. What was the reality? Well, it fucking worked. That's what the reality was. It was stable. It was productive. It was successful. It had a thriving economy. It had functioning institutions, everything you want. Then in the 60s and in the 70s, you had the Bush War. You should read up on the Bush War. It's amazing. So you had Marxist guerrillas backed by the Soviet Union and China, and they tried to overthrow the government. And where it gets really interesting is like from a military's perspective, because, you know, we're guys and we like the military. I was reading into this shit, like the kill-death ratios that the Rhodesian forces achieved were fucking, dude, craziest numbers ever. The Rhodesian Light Infantry, which was this elite white commando, so this unit achieved a kill-death ratio of 50 to 1. 50 to 1 in direct combat operations. That's insane. For 50 killed for every 1 lost. Think about that, dude. Unreal numbers. These guys were so well trained, dude, technically superior, so fucking good at what they did. They were killing guerrillas at ratios that dwarfed anything the United States managed to achieve in Vietnam, dude. It's crazy stat to read that stuff. The broader Rhodesian security forces, the ratios were something like 8 to 1, and peak intensity of the conflict was, I think I read, around 15 to 1. So they had something like 1,100 Rhodesian deaths versus over 10,000 guerrilla kills. And this was against an enemy that outnumbered them 10 to 1. And that was at the end of the war. And you can't forget that they're getting weapons and support from communist cocksuckers, the Soviet Union and China. So fuck the Soviet Union and China for that. And then you had and I always mispronounce this, Sulis. I don't know how they say this. Sulis. If somebody knows how to Sulis, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's scouts, Sulis scouts. We'll just say the scouts. Okay. These guys were even more insane. Same. Another elite unit that used like guerrilla tactics, you could say. Their kill death ratio was 189-1, dude. If you isolated their operations, 189 enemy kills per scout casualty. Holy shit. I've never read numbers that high. That's not a typo. You can look at it. It's spelled Celus, Celous, but I think it has a weird pronunciation. Celus. I don't know how to pronounce it. I know it's not Celus. So again, remember, 189-1. They're responsible for 70% or so of all the guerrilla kills inside Rhodesia. Insane. So we're talking like up to 7,000 guerrillas, and they only lost 36 casualties. So these were just demonstrations of what a small, well-trained, highly motivated force can achieve against like vastly superior numbers when they're fighting for their homeland. That's going to trigger some people. Oh my God. Anyways, unfortunately, it didn't matter. You know, despite the incredible military successes, despite that Rhodesia was winning the war, and at least on the ground, the international community strangled them to death with sanctions and shit. So the UN imposed embargoes on them. Western countries refused to support them, essentially turned their backs on them, and eventually they were forced to accept, majority rule. So Robert Mugabe, everybody knows about him. He took over in 1980, and within 2 decades, dude, he turned the breadbasket of Africa into a basket case. He started seizing the white-owned farms, and I think he did this around the year 2000. He drove out the farmers who knew what they were doing, gave the land to his political cronies and war veterans who had no fucking idea how to farm, by the way, and the result was catastrophic. You can read, there's a funny meme that shows Mugabe, it's like all the headlines of they were taking white farmers' land, forcing white farmers out. Mugabe, then it showed like a few years later, starving to death. Yeah, famine, millions dead, some shit like that. Mugabe is now begging for white farmers to come back. It's a fucking shit show, dude. It's a fucking shit show. Imagine that you kicked out the white people only to have millions of your own starve to death. It's insane. Food production literally collapsed. Zimbabwe went from exporting food to importing food, from being the breadbasket to literally being dependent on foreign aid. Imagine the fuck up. The economy completely imploded. Hyperinflation hit 500 billion%. The currency became so fucking worthless. There's literally pictures of people that were carrying cash in wheelbarrows full of the cash to buy a loaf of bread. Unemployment hit 90%, dude. Millions fled the country. Should have stayed Rhodesia, shouldn't you? Yeah? And that's what happens when you drive out the people who actually know how to run things and replace it with ideology and racial grievances. Zimbabwe had GDP growth before the seizures too, by the way. And after Mugabe's land reforms, if you could even fucking call them that, the GDP got cut in half. And 45% of their population became malnourished. The country that used to feed Africa couldn't feed itself. What a fucking tragedy. And now South Africa is following the same exact trajectory. They're seizing white-owned farms. They're driving out the Afrikaners who produce the food. They're implementing policies based on racial revenge rather than economic reality. And anyone who studied history knows exactly where this is going to lead. This is why Trump's policy matters so much. We're not just talking about refugees. We're talking about securing some of the most skilled, productive farmers in the world before they get slaughtered or driven out. Think about this. People who would come to America and revitalize our agricultural sector, who could buy up the struggling farms in the Midwest and make them productive again. They would integrate seamlessly because they speak English. They share Western values. They have the skills that we desperately need. Compare that to what we've been doing for decades. We're taking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of third worlders from countries that have no fucking concept of Western values, don't speak the language, end up on welfare, who never assimilate, who form parallel societies, and they reject American norms on top of that. The contrast, it couldn't be more stark. And it's not just South Africans, by the way, because Trump's policy also prioritizes Europeans who are being prosecuted for opposing the mass migrations in their countries, for supporting populist parties like Germany's AfD, right? Or speaking out online against the Islamification of Europe. Those people who are facing legal harassment, getting deplatformed, being socially ostracized for expressing views that used to be mainstream, common sense, shit like that. Now they're being offered refuge in America. This is good. Think about what this means. We could be importing the exact people that European governments are trying to silence. The dissidents, the truth tellers, the ones that see that mass migration and what it's doing to their country. These are the ones that oppose the globalist agenda. They want to preserve Western civilization. Think about this. These people would strengthen America. I'm making my case for them. They would vote for the populist conservative policies. These people would fight against the same woke bullshit that's destroying Europe, their homelands. That's why the left considers them a threat. And from an economic standpoint, it's a no-brainer, dude. Who doesn't want Afrikaner farmers who have the skills that are high demand, dude? American agriculture, we have 500,000 job openings, and we cannot fill them. The rural areas in America are dying and could use an infusion of skilled labor like that. People who actually want to farm, not doing it for profit. And from a cultural standpoint, these people, they integrate immediately, dude. They speak English. They're Christian. They share our values. There's no assimilation period needed. They just fit right in like a fucking puzzle. Think about that. So my only problem, if I were to nitpick with all of this shit, is Trump's only taking in, from what I read, 7,500 refugees total per year. 7,500. What the fuck even is that? That's down from Biden's number of 125,000, which is great in the sense of like we needed to slash those numbers, but 7,500? That's nowhere near enough for what we need to be doing. That's all I'm saying. This is such a fucking waste of an opportunity. If we're going to prioritize white South Africans and European populists, we should be taking in like 50,000 a year, 100,000 a year. We should be actively recruiting these people. Land deals in the Midwest, we should be giving them tax incentives to start farms. We should be making it as easy as possible for skilled, value-aligned people to come here while building the fucking wall and deporting millions of illegals. That sounds great to me. So instead, we're getting these pilot programs, 55 here, 59, whatever the number was, a few dozen there. This shit's moving at a fucking snail's pace, while the people are literally getting murdered in South Africa and Europeans are getting arrested for fucking tweets. Trump needs to go way bigger on this shit, way faster. Imagine a world, imagine this, where we deport 20 million illegals. We're draining the system, but we import 20 million Europeans with skills. Okay? We would be so fucking back, dude. You get a snow bunny. You get a snow bunny. You get a snow bunny. That's what I titled this, Snow Bunnies. The boys would be elated. Passports not needed anymore. Let the bunnies come to you. Just saying. So I already know what the counter arguments would be. You know, the courts will block this shit. Congress won't fund it. Blah, 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 blah. Shit like that, right? The same defeatist rhino fucking messaging. The same bullshit we heard for decades. Trump can literally, he has an executive order. He controls the refugee policy. He could literally admit 100,000 Afrikaners, for example, tomorrow if he wanted to. And if the courts block it, you just fight the courts. And then you go around them, just like fucking Democrats do all the time. You make it happen anyway. Just saying, the first Trump admin, and let me just say this. If you brought these people over and then Dems were to get power, do you think the Dems would start a mass deportation campaign against these people that have now settled here and are so productive? You think they would cause a, quote, humanitarian crisis that they're pinning on Trump? Oh, so it's not a humanitarian crisis when they're white. It's sending them back home. But if they're brown or black, that's a humanitarian. You would start to see the double standard. So, yeah. Essentially, the Trump administration, well, he taught us, dude, the first time that when he wants something, he gets that shit done. Look at the wall. Look at the travel bans. He fought every obstacle when he first ran. He eventually won, I think most of them. He should have the same energy for this shit because we're talking a potentially transformative moment for the country. Can you imagine 100,000 of these like skilled Afrikaners or just Europeans in general? Let's just say the Afrikaners are settling those rural areas, buying up the cheap land that nobody wants, making it productive again. Dude, farm life, farm work is not easy, or else everybody would be doing that shit. To make it productive again, to revitalize towns, small towns that got hollowed out by corporate consolidation and demographic collapse, that's a massive infusion. Can you imagine 50,000 European dissidents, for example, who've been fighting the woke agenda in their countries, and they're bringing that fight here, strengthening the populist conservative movement, because that's what we need. Voting in our elections. That's the kind of immigration policy that actually serves American interests. That's what would strengthen this country rather than weaken it, right? Bring in the people that contribute, actually contribute, finally, rather than drain the resources. It's not even controversial by historical standards, by the way. Every single successful immigration period in American history prioritized people who could integrate, who had skills that shared our values. Literally, the 1920s immigration restrictions explicitly favored North Europeans over everybody else. And that wasn't considered scandalous until the 1960s, when the left decided that any kind of selection criteria was racist. So you had Ellis Island, they were doing health checks, and they turned a whole bunch of literacy tests, and they turned people away who couldn't support themselves. They deported people who couldn't integrate. Dude, where's that policy? You know what I mean? So when you take that into consideration, what Trump's actually doing is like fairly moderate by historical standards up until the 60s. It's just that we've been so poisoned by decades of open borders and propaganda that basic fucking common sense now looks extreme, right? Prioritizing English speakers is extreme. Prioritizing people with skills is extreme. If they share Western values, it's extreme. Don't bring them here. It's insane, dude. It's fucking insane. And the fact that we even have to fight for these small numbers, 60 something there, 58 there, or just if he managed to use the full allotment of, let's just say 7,500, and they're all fully qualified and they will all contribute. While we've already taken millions, we took millions under the Dems, millions of doctors and engineers who will never assimilate, right? Actively fucking hate America, who form ethnic enclaves, and they refused, to integrate. Shows how completely how inverted our policies are. And most of the people that the Dems bring in vote Dem. So it's like, here's the taste of your own medicine. They fucking hate it. It's insane. Yeah, it's just look, for example, look at the immigration assimilation census data, right? It shows, I think I had it here in the notes, 70%. Yeah, 70% unemployment rates years after arrival. They're on welfare at rates 3-4 times higher than Americans. Their children have worse educational outcomes, worse economic outcomes, higher crime rates. These are verifiable facts, and no one wants to talk about them because they're politically incorrect. Not all cultures are equal. It's just in the data. Meanwhile, we know that immigrants from stable, English-speaking countries, they integrate immediately, they work at higher rates, they earn more, they're less likely to be on welfare, their children do better in school, they commit less crime. The data is fucking overwhelming, but we're not allowed to act on it. Why? Because it would be considered discrimination. That's bullshit. Fuck that. Discrimination in favor of people who will succeed and contribute is what every sane country does. It's what we should be doing. Trump has the opportunity to make this happen on a scale that could actually matter and could actually change the demographic trajectory of rural America. That could strengthen our agricultural base and our populist movement. That's what I'm saying. Instead, we're getting pilot programs. This is the part that annoys me. And all these small numbers and incremental bullshit. White South Africans are still getting tortured, murdered on their farms. And European dissidents are still getting arrested for fucking tweets. I would consider this an emergency airlift. That's how he should operate this fucking shit. Like frequent wind for people who actually deserve it. We should be seeing tens of thousands of these people per year minimum coming in here, helping America. And I get their political constraints, whatever. But even what Trump's doing now is causing a massive backlash from the left. And the establishment GOP too, by the way. They're all in the same fun. They're all the same cocksuckers. So, yeah, that's probably, I would say that's why you need to go bigger and faster right now. You're still you'll get called a racist, you'll get called a white supremacist, and that's barely with these small numbers. Just go all in. Fuck it. All in and bring them all. Make it actually matter then. Fuck it. Because the window for this kind of policy might not be open for long. You got to think about the midterm soon. Maybe 6 years total if Vance wins the election. After that, who knows what's going to happen, right? If Democrats take over, they'll flood the country with fucking the same old usual third world overflow, and we'll never get another chance to do this the right way. And every month, we're moving at this pathetic pace, you know? Every one of these months, it's just another month that these farmers are getting tortured, murdered on their land, all this shit. And we're busy taking people in who never contribute shit. That's all I'm saying. That's not racism, by the way. That's just recognizing reality instead of living in the diversity is our strength fantasy land that got Zimbabwe, for example, destroyed and is currently destroying South Africa right fucking now. So, yes, hashtag snow bunnies for all. I'm fully with it. Bring them. That's the kind of white ass somebody wrote. That's the kind of white avalanche I'm looking for. Like that. Oh, man. Yeah. It's a shame that we're not doing more, honestly. This is the perfect excuse that we could use.